We are very happy that most of you have registered for both parts of the workshop. And just to explain what is the link between those. So today we will, let's say, have a more general introduction into the project, the scenarios, and where the data flows from and to. So you can, if you never heard of the project, that's the best way to start. You will be briefed from scratch. And tomorrow, as you can see from the title, Architecture, Protocols and APIs, we are going to work on the details, on the technical details, on interoperability, on how it fits together, let's say, with the world of other applications, and so on. So this is our, let's say, integrated agenda for day 2. Sorry, for both days, and tomorrow we will also have some contributions from our external stakeholder board, where we have certain experts to come in. And what is important for both days, but in particular also today, what you will see will be enriched by demonstrations. So you will really see the project results in action. So I think we can already go on to the first presentation, and I sincerely hope that Carrie will now be able to speak. Let me quickly introduce her. Carrie is the Deputy Head of Unit EHS Wellbeing and Aging at the European Commission at DG Connect. And she has already formally worked at the Commission in DG Santé and Eurostat. She has a degree in mathematics and also holds an MSc and a doctorate in public health from the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. So she has both some medical background and the methods, and she's now in the, let's say, in the informatics unit with a broad spectrum of the European Commission. So Carrie, it's a pleasure to welcome you, and you will now speak to us on health data sharing strategies and implementation. Can we hear you?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Great. Yes.
You can hear me. Excellent. Sorry about that. I think whatever, all the advice I got while I was muted was all sensible stuff, so it works in the end. Well, yes. Yeah, good morning, everybody. I'm very happy to be joining you for this 2 mornings. And can I just say how I'm really impressed by how you've done this over 2 mornings, because this is like the obvious thing one can do with digital. We don't have to sit all day in a meeting, but and it makes perfect sense to me. We can sort of use our afternoons for something else. I'm not sure whether this was by design but it's a brilliant solution. And I've been telling colleagues at in the office that this is how we need to run our all-day meetings, by splitting them into 2 parts. Yes, so I'm just going to give you a quick overview of the data strategy, really. I don't know whether I can move my slides myself. And how it, well, that's good, that's the first slide. Well, look, this is the sort of obligatory first slide we have. We use a lot at the moment. Well, these are all the things that we're, Connect we're working with. We want to try and see how we can bring them to bear in the health and care, health data space. Of course, the performance computing, our colleagues and director at C. Great work on AI, which of course was very much a part of the digital package, the white paper on AI, Internet of Things, the cloud computing. I think probably much more relevant to you, the possibilities for M-health and wearables, telehealth, which we've seen explode across Europe, increase a lot across Europe during the era of coronavirus. And of course, all the connectivity issues around 4G, 5G. I think even they want to talk about 6G, and they even want to talk about 7G nowadays. So it's all. If you can go on to the next slide. So the data package was adopted in February, as I'm sure you're all aware, alongside the white paper for artificial intelligence. So what is it trying to do fundamentally? Well, I mean, we are, of course, in charge of the digital single market. For this to work, we need to have the data. We need to have the data in a joined up way so that we can defragment these different silos of data across the EU, and combined with laws and governance that can enable operators and innovators to work across the EU, put in place a genuine digital single market. Part of that then is a single market for data. So we want to see the data fundamentally flow within the EU across the sectors. We want to make it available to people who can add value to it in society, the innovation community, researchers. In the health, of course, it's also the clinicians, all those involved with the primary usage of data. But we want to do that in such a way that's European and true to our values. So alongside the work on the infrastructure and making the data accessible is the work on creating this right governance framework that respects, how it is that our citizens want their data to be used. Of course, this is particularly relevant to the health and care sector, given how much of it is sensitive. So alongside these two, then we need to put, having created the frameworks, we then need to make clear rules of access and use of data, clear mechanisms that mean we can translate the frameworks into practice, and so that researchers and innovators aren't stuck for knowing that there's a GDPR, but can actually know what that means for them and what that means for their practice. So if you go to the next slide. So the strategy's fundamentally got 4 pillars. On the one hand, as I mentioned, we've got this cross-sectoral governance framework. So these are all the different aspects. We already are building this, of course, with the GDPR and the NIS, the cybersecurity governance. We've also got proposals on improving e-privacy frameworks. So to a certain extent, of course, this is a kind of global framework relevant to all data spaces, but then we do envisage, as I'll mention later, that there will be a degree of course governance arrangements within each sector. The strategy also proposes what this slide is calling enablers, which is part of which is encouraging the member states to combine with the EU, potentially other actors, to invest in major bits of infrastructure that will be valuable across all the data, relevant to all the data. So very major infrastructures, perhaps federated cloud infrastructures, for example. Of course, another aspect, and we see this clearly into our Digital Europe programme, financing programme, is that of course we need there to be the capacity built within health and care systems, within our economic societies that on the one hand create the demand for data from a health perspective. So we're talking digital literacy, so we have a population that can appreciate and understand the value of the data and what it can do for them, and so actually develop an interest in their own data and a knowledge about how to use it through these tools. But also, of course, the skills of the people in the hospitals, the people in the primary care clinics, people in bodies where they will do particular analysis. We need to have, when we transfer the data, we need to have it land in a sorry, I'm just going to land in a receptive environment where people can use the data well. Sorry, this is my dog. If you can hear some barking in the background. And of course, then we need to roll out the data spaces. If you go to the next slide. In the next slide. So the data strategy talks about developing a number of data spaces. Of course, health there, key amongst them. But we see, the data picture, it's got to develop across the board. I think as we go on, we'll realize there's a lot of data relevant to health that is not necessarily classified as health data. And in each one of these different data spaces, they all have their own idiosyncrasies and characteristics. As I've said, health is particularly about sensitive data, but we have to develop for each of them, of course, the right technical tools for the interoperability, for the standards, for enabling the improved storage and processing, the smaller infrastructures needed to link particular kinds of data, whether it's from genomics to electronic health records, both within a health and care system if it's electronic health records, as well as across borders. Yes, and alongside that, having mentioned governance in an overarching way, what we're envisaging, I think, is that you've got a lot of micro governance arrangements you're going to need, not only just for the health and care sector, which is something that the Commission will shortly come forward with an act that's going to encourage member states to develop their governance per se of their national health data spaces. That will perhaps encourage them to take a look at what Finland and France are doing and to see what of that might apply to their own countries. But also even in relation to particular data sets, as I mentioned, genomics. We're working a lot with the genomics member states and stakeholders, and we're seeing that possibly we're going to need to have, of course, very particular tools for that particular data set that understands who exactly wants to access it, where precisely it is stored, and we will have tools that will interpret the overarching framework and, for example, around data access. And the stakeholders can pick these up, and we'll create a working data sharing environment. And of course, on the IT capacity, cloud storage and processing service will be essential to build up that capacity in member states, and this is partly what our funds in the next multi-annual financial framework will be put towards. If you can go to the next slide. So, I mean, all the things, of course, we want to use the health data for in the health data space for. We've got governance aspects. We want to use it for better healthcare. We want to use it for better policy making. We want to use it for better research and innovation. And then on the other axes, we've got all the things we need to develop, as I mentioned, the governance. We've got pieces of work going on. Our colleagues in Santé are exploring about common arrangements for secondary use of data that will respect GDPR, and this is something the German presidency is very interested in and hope to come forward with something, I think, before the end of their presidency. We've got the work on, of course, the AI framework that went alongside the data strategy. So here we're seeing, of course, different levels of governance. We've got the governance for the AI per se, and then we've got how it will have to be applied into individual sectors. This will have to be developed. We've got all the work on the quality of data, the interoperability, following up from the Commission recommendation on the European Electronic Health Record Exchange format, also from last year in February. We have a specific project started last month, eHealth, which is taking forward the work to develop the next generation then of the next technical specifications for the new health domains that we proposed in that, the lab tests, the discharge letters and the medical images. We've got work as well through different stakeholders to support the verification, making it findable, accessible, interoperable, reusable of the health and care data. Very keen to get behind those principles. And then we've got the work on the different kind of infrastructures. At the moment, our colleagues in Santé particularly are focusing around the next phase of development of the eHealth DSI, now called My Health at EU. And their work as well to link up the different kind of rare disease data registries and patient registries. And as I mentioned already, the 1 million genomes project that we have running at the moment, that we hope will have a major breakthrough by 2022. That's the goal, to have the 1 million genomes securely accessible across the EU by then. The colleagues in Santé are also going to be working with the EMA and the pharmaceutical regulators at national and EU level to help them put in place pilot projects that will see their work around the decision-making digitally transformed through use of electronic health records and electronic health record databases. We have some projects running under the Horizon 2020 program, several smallish projects, all looking at ways to create repositories of cancer images, anonymized cancer images. So these will run for a couple of years, and at the end of that, we may look and see, well, how can we scale that up? So what do we need for future under our investment programs to see that scaled up? And of course, there's the work with the infrastructures, because they already have some proofs of concept amongst the research infrastructures for how to do some of this complicated data sharing, such as around genomics. I've mentioned the genomics, I think, a few times. I think we can skip that slide. Yes, and this is, of course, this is the work around the eHealth DSI, which is now rebranded My Health at EU. Currently, of course, we've got the progress in regard to some countries exchanging data on patient summary and e-prescriptions. We're doing now the work to do the new technical specifications, and in time these will be built into the infrastructure so that we can actually see this data exchange for primary care usage across the EU. And to the next slide. Well, actually, no, I've already spoken about this. Of course, this is our grid. This is where what we want to take the next step forward. And this is all en route. So I don't know whether you're familiar with the XE Health H2020 project, but it's really a project with a number of member states, about 20 or so member states. It's coordinated by Portugal, and it aims to be in the spirit of the recommendation as we wished for, where we said, we should not create these in a black box. It's got a very active element around the inclusion of stakeholders into this process over 2 years. And we also want to bring in a link between this project and the eHealth stakeholder group that we have set up, so that we can be ensured that there is light cast upon this process. It's not happening in isolation, and we can make sure that we maximize the flow of information to and from stakeholders as these develop. To the next slide. So, of course, we know there's a lot of challenges to putting this all in place. We know that we've got, if you look across the EU, that we've got a lot of work to do to develop the data processing storage, particularly in health and care systems, which are, of course, publicly financed, reliant on taxpayers' resources, so they will need support. And we have to put in place the data governance within these health and care sectors, the health and care systems themselves, and the literacy. We want to make the data available for reuse, encourage greater uptake of the voluntary data sharing amongst private actors, for example. And of course, this issue I think was particularly relevant to this project about promoting real user empowerment and how do we develop the data portability mechanisms. And if you go to the next slide, I think this is my last slide. Okay. So then, next steps. I mean, we've got a lot of lessons to learn from the COVID pandemic. I mean, the COVID pandemic, of course, has been very, very illuminating for the e-health world, and I think it's really led to a clear understanding about about how valuable data is in this context. We've got a number of programs starting up. The Recovery and Resilience Fund is a new way of financing. It's very, very large. The Commission President wants 20% of that to be spent on digital, of which a sizable portion will be health. We've got other new programs, Horizon Europe, Digital Health Programme, the EU for Health, all of which will devote funds towards developing and capacity building the digital transformation of health and care. And I've already mentioned the health stakeholder group. So with that, I know that you don't want to lose too much time. So that's more or less my presentation. I'm very happy to take any questions if there's time, or of course I'm on during the morning and staying with you all morning.
Yes, thanks a lot, Carrie. Quite nice overview. And in fact, we would like to take the opportunity that we can welcome you later on at the panel. I've also noted down questions that we will come back with questions in the panel, and I give now back to Tino. He will quickly introduce Matteo.
Thank you, Stefan. Now it's time to have an overview of the InteropEHRate project, and for that reason, I invite Matteo to take the floor. Please, Matteo, as project coordinator from Engineering, Italy, the word is yours.
Thank you very much, Tino. Thanks to all of you to be here today in this virtual workshop. I would like to thank a lot Carrie as well for her presentation and overview, which helped me to position basically InteropEHRate in the initiatives that the European Commission is doing in terms of data ecosystem and the data strategy of the European Commission for the next year. Something has been already said by Tino in his introduction about InteropEHRate. InteropEHRate is a project which has been funded by the European Commission under the call topic promoting the prototyping of a European electronic health record exchange. And in doing this, the project, which is named the Interoperable Electronic Health Record at User Edge, the full title, is composed of 16 partners from 7 different European countries, with the expertise and background from healthcare solution provider, hospital, universities, research centers, and as well as European and local stakeholder associations involved. When we started to conceive the project, we had in front of us a lot of barriers which are still existing despite the huge effort that the European Commission and member states are doing in order to overcome this, in particular the lack of data exchange among healthcare organizations, lack of semantic and syntactic interoperability, lack of involvement of citizens and patients. This is one of the challenges that Kerry just mentioned in terms of promote real user empowerment, something like that. I think that this is more or less the same things. Lack of data exchange among citizens and healthcare organizations. Well, having in mind these barriers, these problems that European Commission member states were facing, are still facing, we wanted to empower citizens and easy the European data sharing among healthcare stakeholders, or at least stimulate, facilitate this, in basically taking into consideration the regulation that the European Commission draw, in particular the GDPR, which is the most important one in this respect. And of course, in doing this, we want to enable a new interoperability-based economy, which of course underlies the fact that it is necessary to enable data sharing in a more easy way. But given this, which is the real project aims, to support basically people's health by opening them up with the new ways to make health data available, their health data available whenever and wherever needed. But how this can be done? Well, the intuitive way is to putting this health data in their hands. Okay, how this is possible? By providing them with the so-called smart electronic health record, which we in InteropEHRate call simply SER, which can be installed on their mobile device. Which are the features of this SER? It can work independently on the internet connection. It should not be dependent on cloud storage, meaning that I will not be obliged to store my data on the cloud. I can keep all the data on my smartphone. And in this way, we want to make the patients always in full control of their health data. In addition to this, we want to enable a data transfer which is always secure with the channels that include also a device-to-device communication by means of proximity cross. But you will see all these details later in the presentation of my colleagues and partners. And in addition to this, open interchange protocol which support the patient-centered exchange of health data between patients, healthcare organization, and researcher. To say what? To say that it is the patients that is basic, or the citizen, which is the vehicle to transfer this data. Of course, this is InteropEHRate when started the project and when fixed these aims, had in mind the initiative which were currently brought ahead by the Commission. Kerry mentioned the February 2019 recommendation, which is one of those that we seriously take into consideration. And starting from this, we want to, of course, contribute in paving the way toward an open EHR exchange format and processes. In this respect, the project vision is then to contribute in complementing and integrating the current interoperability infrastructure which has been put in place by the institutional initiatives with new technology which are based on data exchange centered on person. What does it mean? That we want to propose a bottom-up approach which is driven exactly by people who owns their data on their mobile phone, which does not require a coordination by a superior authority which has been set by European Commission or member state, giving them more freedom to people to control their health data. In this respect, the main results of the project will be to provide open specification which regards the interoperability protocol. As I previously mentioned, the device-to-device one for proximity, which can work even without internet, but also a remote-to-device protocol which allows because there is this opportunity as well, to make the SER, so the smart electronic health record, to communicate with the cloud storage or with a remote electronic health record to exchange data with these, but also defining a conformance level which define the constraints and guidelines that a smart electronic health record or a cloud storage should fulfill in order to be compliant with the InteropEHRate approach, as well as a FHIR profile, because this is important point to stress. FHIR is the standard, reference standard we decided to adopt for all our specification, in order to be in line with the new trends that interoperabilities in healthcare are moving on, both in US but also in Europe. In this respect, providing this open specification, we want to make these results available to the community to develop on top of this specification and guidance new applications, for instance, smart electronic health record, standard compliant, and regulated by well-defined interoperable governance model, which will be then that we are defining now, and which will be the one that is somehow govern and regulate the evolution and the improvement of the specification that will be made available to the community. Of course, in order to make and to give evidence of the fact that these specifications, conformance level, profile work, we also provide a reference implementation, which will be then of interoperate reference implementation, which will be then trialed in 3 different use cases scenario, which recall the most frequent, 2 of them recall the most frequent cases in hospital: a visit, a traditional visit with doctors, but not your doctors, and the situation where we have to go to the emergency room. Last but not least, and this is probably the novelty, we also want to enable the fact that citizens can donate their data for research purposes. So there is we want to also offer, thanks to this protocol, the possibility for citizens to give their data for the benefits of a clinical trial study or a larger scale study, donating their data according to well-defined conditions and privacy constraints. The pilots will be operated in 4 countries, Italy, Greece, Romania, and Belgium. And last but not least, given the kind of results that we promote, it is also extremely important to involve stakeholders at the national, European, international level in order to increase awareness about our results, hoping that this will be used even once the project will be finished. This is my last slide, I think. Yes, it is. Of course, in the next slide, my colleagues will enter into the details, and they will give you any additional information about what I just give you as an overview. Thanks to all, and I hope you will enjoy the next presentation.
Thank you very much, Matteo. Stefan, over to you to present next session.
Yes, thank you indeed. And for the questions that we are receiving, we will start to verbally discuss questions after the next presentation, which is still complement or making the picture complete on what the project is doing. So we are now really moving to practice, and we can welcome now for presentation Vincent Koenen. He is a boss of Anderman 7, a software company in Liège in Belgium, and Adrian Bradu from Simavi, again, a software development company from Romania, and they will now really demonstrate the access to patient data of the point of care. So that means how does a European patient receive data when he's everywhere in Europe, and he can share it with health professionals, and later on get it back into his personal device. And this is now what our both colleagues will present. Welcome, Vincent, and up to you to start with this.
Thank you, Stefan. Do you hear me correctly?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. I want to now start the demonstration with my colleague Adrian, but I also want to acknowledge here that this is the result of the work of a very large team. As Matteo said, 16 partners and a few persons in each of those companies and institutions. So I'm privileged to show the results, but it's really the work of a very large group. Second remark is that what you will see here is really the tip of the iceberg. You will see a smartphone screen basically and a computer screen, but back in the back there is a lot. There is a security, obviously. There is a standards, converters, identification mechanism, authentication mechanisms. There are translation systems. So there is really a lot behind this, what you will see. So what you will see is summarized in this global picture. The first part will be just this one. It's the smart EHR used by a citizen in complete autonomy. So at this point, there is no connection to whatever. It's all local. My data is stored on my smartphone. Of course, we have backup mechanisms, but basically I can start using my smart EHR and store my data under my own control on my smartphone, and I'm in full control. When we say smart EHR, it refers to smartphone EHR. In the future, of course, there's going to be advanced features, but basically this type of EHR is sometimes called a personal health record or a patient health record. I will show you one example, which is based on the Andaman 7 application, which is the software that we've been working on in our company. And we are extending this software to use the protocols and features developed as part of the InteropEHRate project. If you want to take a look at Andaman 7, you can search for it on the Apple Store or on the Android Google Play Store and use those software. It's free for patients. So the first part is this one. So we are going to show you what a basic use of an electronic health record on a smartphone can be. So here you see, for example, that I have it's me on the first line, and then I have my 3 children at the bottom. So I have on my smartphone my health data, including the health data of my children. And I also have a demo record there in the middle. And I will now quickly show you what it looks like. So initially, sorry, oops. I don't know why it's starting from 0, maybe because I click on the wrong location. Sorry, I will start the demo again. So what you have is, let me try to get there. Voila, here you can see that there is a number of sections with documents, with drugs that I'm taking, allergies. Initially, it looks very simple, and we wanted to make it look very simple for the patients. I'm sorry, it doesn't work anymore. It was working during the practice. So Tino, can I suggest that you take over the control and you click, you pause and play when I tell you so. So let's catch up on this, right? Keep it going. Okay, this is the global view. This is the first view of a basic view of the patient. You can let it run. And then I will go into a more detailed view of another patient here, Adam Spola. Now you can pause. You can see here that it can be extremely large. So for example, here we are in the allergy sections, and I have the allergies of the person, of Paula, but also refuted allergies and also family allergies. So it could be quite complete. So you can play. Besides allergies, which are an important part of the health record, obviously, there are other elements. Here I will show you another section, which is the document sections, and you can see here that there could be images like this one, of course limited with the storage of the phone, but this shows that it can work, and you can see also that there is documents, letters, it could be PDF, basically any type of document can be stored in your smart EHR system, ready for you to be used or to be shared with another doctor and so on. Here we're going in the body measurement element, where you can enter your weight, your size, and all kinds of biometric values. You can see here there's a long list of elements to add, and you can see also here that you have various elements for better view of your data, but also here you see the whole history with lots of values. And if I click on one, you can see in the middle Withings, which is the brand of a scale, automatic scale. So this shows you that data can come automatically in your health record from connected devices. Blood test with various kinds of results. Here it could be documents, which can just be read by a human usually, or it can be structured data. So we try to provide a high or low quality of data depending on where it's coming from. Here you have the medication list that this patient is taking, and I click on this to see what is my schedule for today. So I was supposed to take the cetirizine in the morning. I click to mention that I took it. And all of that data about the drugs I took can be then sent to my doctor almost in real time. There is a small logbook also for patients to enter data over the course of their life. And so that can be reviewed by doctors if the patients agree to share the data with the doctors. Here you have notifications saying that new data has arrived coming from your hospital, for example, or from the lab. And to finish, here is a list of external services that could be added to, that are added actually. So you can connect to your lab, your hospital, you can order medication online. If you contribute to research, you can find a clinical trial, as you can see here. This got a bit fast, but I don't want to go into the details of all of this because this is just a global presentation of the application. So with this, we are concluding, I believe, the first part of the presentation. If you can click to go to the next slide. You see that we have added a small part to the illustration. This we will now demonstrate how to connect to the central place, like a hospital or a regional center or a national center, depending on the choices of the country. And here you see at the bottom EHR. This is supposed to represent the electronic health record for you in your hospital. And to this, we add the little red part, which is the InteropEHRate Health Services. So it's a set of software components that hospitals or regional centers can reuse, can add to their system to make their system open to the external world, so citizen and others. Next slide. We have a small demo here, but again, it's going to show just a surface. So here you see two patients. There's not a third patient. I'm going to the demonstration part of the InteropEHRate system. Pause, please. Here you have a small explanation, and you see at the bottom that we will use the first choice, which is import demo health records. So I will import fake data, of course, in this case, from my hospital. You can see below that we are already working on the next steps that Matteo explained to you. So the emergency setup, and below is the research setup, sharing my data with the research community. Yeah. So here I click and I am offered to select a hospital. There's going to be lots of hospitals, obviously, depending on the country. I'm going to choose my Italian hospital because I'm an Italian patient. And then here, maybe pause. You can see that it looks a very simple screen, but here we are reusing the whole work that has been done by the European community as part of the EIDAS system. So EIDAS is Electronic Identification and Authorization Services. So this is a way to make sure that the right person, the right citizen, is presenting themselves. and there's going to be various ways to strongly authenticate yourself. So you can play, yeah, and you will see here that I will enter my login and password to connect to my hospital. So there's been some kind of agreement with my hospital previously to this, and when connecting here, yes, login. This is connecting to the hospital in real. So there is a real server here, and I've downloaded my health record from my hospital. And now I'm going to show you what it looks like in the application. So you see that there is a third patient, Maria Rossi. And if I click there, you can see that there are a number of sections that have been filled in, like the allergy sections, the administrative information about myself as the hospital has it. If you go to the allergy, you will see that I'm allergic to penicillin, and this is in Italian, right? So it looks obvious, but we have a language management mechanisms. Here we're showing you the conditions that have been downloaded from my hospital and various elements. Here my doctor's name, which is important if I go abroad after and I have a health problem. It's good to be able to communicate between doctors about my health. So I think that's it. We can skip to the third slide, and this is going to be the third and last part of the demo, which is going to be done by my colleague Adrian. And this demonstrates another use case where I'm the citizen A, so I'm the patient. I'm Italian. I'm going to Greece on holidays, and there I have health problems. What do? I have all of my health data on my smartphone. What can I do now when meeting a new doctor, a Greek doctor here in Greece? So Adrian, I give you the control and the voice.
Thank you, Vincent. Thank you, Stefan. So we are presenting now the interaction between the smart mobile phone with electronic health record and Andaman 7 on the Andaman 7 application, and the PC with the healthcare professional application. So the scenario demonstrates some features of the protocol during the visit of the patient going abroad to a doctor. So we'll have on the left screen the patient mobile phone, and on the right screen the doctor's PC. So we had to, this demonstration show the protocol with no internet access. So the patient is presenting his phone, the data on his phone by sharing the health record to the doctor. So he announced that he wants to share data. So the doctor is opening his own application of the healthcare professional and presents on his screen a QR code that the phone is reading with his camera, and so it establishes the connections over Bluetooth. So the information it is included in the QR code, and first the PC is sending the information of the doctor to the mobile phone. So the customer, the client, agrees to connect and to send the information to the PC. So now first it's sending the IPS, there's the patient summary with the information about the name, the demographic information, emergency data, and also medication and whatever other information is available and it's accepted on the doctor side. So the information is treated and the transmission is completed. Sometimes if it's needed, also translation is done in this part. So the doctor can see the information of the patient in his own language. So we'll show a few information like demographic information, medication, allergies, and so on. So also we can send the information back to the mobile phone. So we'll play with current medication and adding prescription. So we'll say that we add one aspirin, for instance. It's something common. So we enter the details and the period of the time the patient had to take the medication. We can we'll see that the information still remains on the PC. So a new record is added locally on the doctor's PC or in the hospital environment. So we can edit, we can delete, we can add more information. We can change the period of the medication. And now we want to send the information to the mobile phone. So we'll open the notification on the mobile phone to see how the information is transferred, just for the demo reasons. So we send the information and it arrives on the mobile phone. So we showed now the information exchange between the mobile phone and the PC, and also from the PC to the mobile phone without using internet. We'll show a few more features of the application of the hospital. So the laboratory tests, and we'll see some imaging that comes from the smart mobile phone from the health record. Takes a little bit of time. So basically, okay. So now, okay, we have the capability to choose what of the parts of the protocol are used. We can download every information that is in the patient file, or we can just select some part of it. So now we operate the disconnection. So we have shown how InteropEHRate has been able to enable the exchange of the data in an offline mode without internet. So they are just connected locally. So that was for the presentation of an exchange done with patient that is abroad. It comes from abroad to a doctor. Sorry. So I think we can go to the question and answers now. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Vincent, do you also want to add something at this point?
No, I think that we are a bit late in the program, so maybe we can take one or two quick questions on this demonstration specifically, then we can take the other questions to the panel later, I suggest.
Okay, not sure. I see here, Luc, do you want to bring this up? We have here a question by Sarah Roda in 3 parts.
Yes.
Maybe Sarah, you would like to you could open your microphone, and if you want also your camera, so you can so that you have the interaction with you.
Hello, thank you. Sorry, it pressed when I was trying to still write in the whole bunch. It sent out. So apologies for the repetition. But first on it looks very interesting, everything, and congratulations on the project. And it looks very, of course, the value and of exchanging health records, it's beyond dispute. And what I wanted to bring was if there is a wrong move by a patient to share the data, can this be retrieved by himself? Then also it looked like through demo 2 that the data that was coming into our mobiles and the smartphone would be done by hospitals. So there we know there is a validation, and we know that the data is correct. But what kind of changes could then a patient do and put in jeopardy that data integrity? And also for a doctor, how do you envisage that they learn about using this tool in a quick way?
Thank you for your very good question, Sarah. And the goal of this project is to also address all those questions and issues on the ethics, on the legal, and on the practical aspects. So this is not purely technical. So regarding the wrong move of data, since we are in a system where the data is sent from one side to the other, it's a bit like an email or like a regular letter. Once it is sent, it's a bit hard or impossible to retrieve it, right? So we took a number of precautions that before the patient is sharing any type of data, we asked him very clearly what type of data he wants to share. There could be some also on the types of warnings and limits on what is being shared. And then there is a confirmation. But once the data is sent, it's a bit like an email. You cannot easily unsend an email. So this is part of the system. Now you mentioned who can introduce information, and we are really strongly in favor of a completely distributed system where a number of actors can enter the data. But what is very important for us is the high level of traceability. So for every piece of data, just like the number of my weight, like if I weigh 80 kilo, this is entered by myself or a scale or my doctor or a nurse in the hospital. And depending on who is entering the data, it has a different value or credit for a doctor or for a health professional. So what we do is to attach to every piece of information who is the source and the timestamp to know when that happened, right? Because in the future world, the doctor will have to process a lot of data coming from many sources, and sometimes the data from a patient has less credibility, but it can be extremely useful too, right? So it's important simply to know where the data comes from to change maybe the precautions before using the data. You also said in your question that if the data is coming from a doctor or hospital, then it's trusted. I'm a bit sorry to inform you that about 30% of all information in the hospital is wrong in the health records. So there's been studies on that. So the doctors don't have the time. Sometimes they forget to enter information. Sometimes they enter correct information, which is invalidated after some time because the pharmacist says there is a drug interaction there and he replaces one drug with another. So there are many, many reasons for that, but there's approximately 30% of information in the hospital which is wrong. And what's more, if you show that information to the patient can in great part correct that information. So I would like to move over that myth and that belief that doctors are right, they know everything, and patients are wrong and don't know anything. I'm exaggerating a bit, I know, but health is very a collaborative effort, and all the people that are serious and can be trusted, including the patient, including the nurse, including the physiotherapist, should in some way contribute to the healing of the patient. the important thing is to know who has been producing what information. And then there was a third part in your question, I believe.
I think we have slowly to move on, friends.
Okay, no problem, I understand. Let's keep the discussion for the panel.
Yes.
Thank you for the question.
Okay. Tino?
Yes, Stefan, may I say something before to go to the next presentation? Sorry, just a couple more. I see that there are a lot of questions. Unfortunately, due to time constraints, we cannot answer all of them, but we will collect all of them, and we will ask even to reply offline to you and to all the panel, because I think that these are important. Don't worry about this. We will keep track of this question. We will answer to you, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you, Matthias. That's a very good point. And hopefully those who would stay on with us tomorrow, some of those questions I've spotted would also be answered by presentations tomorrow. That's not a promotional, but it's indeed, since tomorrow we are going more into details. Okay, Tino?
Yeah, thank you, Stefan. We have seen now the first scenario, the healthcare visit. Now let's go to deep dive on the second scenario, the centralized data sharing for research. And for this, we have Stefano Darmiani. He's the Chief Medical Information Officer at the Fondazione Toscana Gabriele Monasterio in Pisa, Italy. Stefano, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Tino. Okay. So the main goal of the scenario was the development of a platform capable to support two different types of research protocol, a retrospective study and a prospective study. A retrospective study, you know, looks backwards and examines exposure to suspected risks or protection factors in relation to an outcome that is established at the start of the study. A special kind of retrospective study is the retrospective cohort study that compares groups of individuals who are alike in many ways but differs by certain characteristics. Prospective study watches instead for outcomes such as the development of a disease or an event, of course during the study period, and relates to the other factors such as suspected risk, protection factors, or of course clinical information. The prospective study looks forward, enrolling patients unaffected by the outcome and observing them to see whether the outcome has occurred. And the referral model is the Open Research Network. The InteropEHRate Open Research Network is constituted by patients and by a group of research organizations, just like hospital, university, research center, that exploit a common IT infrastructure that implements the communication protocol for health data that we are defining here in InteropEHRate. And they share also the respect of the accountability principle for health data management defined by the GDPR, of course. Anyway, the starting point is here, is the patient, where the patient or person might not be a patient, might be a healthy person who holds a smartphone with the Smart EHR application installed. And the patient gave his or her consent to participate to the research network. And then we have a research organization who implements the InteropEHRate protocol, not yet, sorry, that is here represented by a researcher and is capable to define a clinical objective and the collection of information to reach the goal, along with the processing methodology where and when applicable. The researcher is playing the role of PI, principal investigator, and is in charge of obtaining the consent by the reference ethical committee, of course, for the study. And with his or her research team will map the information to be collected with the reference vocabulary that we adopt in the Smart EHR. That are a common vocabulary, just like ICD, LOINC, NOMAD, where a license can be applied, of course, but also local vocabularies that represents a particular view or particular approach for the study design. because many times a global vocabulary might not be sufficient to express a semantic meaning related to the study. For example, of usage of such vocabulary, each research protocol designs a mandatory specification on feature of subject to be studied that are the eligibility criteria or simply the selection criteria. Such criteria are formalized as one or more expressions to model the relationship between multiple concepts embedded within eligibility criteria statement and that are related to collected data. And we are using global common vocabulary to express the eligibility criteria. And this is the first application of the proposed standard. Anyway, using the IRS, that is the InteropEHRate Research Services, we use the semantic meaning expressed here in the vocabulary, and we publish sorry, I cannot go forward. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Tino. So using the InteropEHRate Research Services, the principal investigator will publish the study in the common repository that are expressed in a structured format as eligibility criteria, just like I said, but also exit criteria and requested data and timings that are used to transmit information from the patient to the research center. Along, of course, with data protection policy, if we need anonymization or pseudonymization to be applied to the transmitted information. Along with the published protocol, we have the information document for the study and the consent digitally signed by the principal investigator side. Other research centers can participate in the study in a multicentric protocol, and this is normal. And we can think to have a center for each country or each region devoted to involve and manage patients of that country or that region. And the research protocol is then transmitted, this next animation. Okay, thank you. To the Smart HR application for the patient. And the Smart HR application, of course, the patient have given the consent to be invited to new research study. And the Smart HR application automatically and silently match the enrollment criteria that was received by the protocol repository with the content of the Smart HR application, in order to determine if the patient may be or not enrolled in the research without transmitting any information outside the phone. If the evaluation of the research criteria is positive, so the patient might be a candidate for that research, the Smart EHR application displays to the patient a notification, the blue question mark, communicating that the patient may participate to the study and that he or she would like to participate to the research. And for this purpose, the collection of patient consent, the Smart HR application shows to the patient the details of the research protocol, just like the purpose of the research, the coordinating research center, the local research center, the requested health data, the level of anonymization, a whole set of information that is submitted to the patient in order to let him or her assess if he or she would like to adhere to that research protocol. Let's say that the patient accepts to participate in the research. And then, if supported by the Smart HR application, of course, the patient digitally sign the consent. After, the patient is capable to select a local, where existing research center, included in the protocol, of course, and belonging to the region of the patient or corresponding to patient position or corresponding to patient preference, In case the patient cannot sign the consent on the Smart EHR application, or if required by the research protocol, because many research protocols start with an initial visit or initial assessment of the patient, so they need to see the patient. The patient goes to the selected reference center and signs the consent to participate in the research study. And then the consent restricts, of course, the use of shared information to that specific research protocol. We cannot use information for any other purposes out of the purposes related to the research protocol and approved by the ethical committee. And then the Smart EHR stores in the mobile device the consent and send a copy to the reference center or the principal investigator of the consent. At the same time, or the first time of transmission, an anonymous identifier, where applicable, where requested by the study, is assigned to the patient to be used for data pseudonymization. Then we start the study. At the start of the research, as indicated within the specification of the research protocol, the Smart EHR send in a file format using file protocol the pseudonymized health data to the reference research center, let's say for the next 2 years, and collects information of the past 5 years. So the mixed model of prospective research protocol is very common. In prospective study, the protocol can also request the patient to be submitted to visits or examination or data entering for personal question, and this can be made directly using patient form and Smart EHR application. Of course, the patient can withdraw his participation at any time, and the cycle of data transmission will stop immediately. And finally, with this protocol, we try to give a direct implementation of a principle: findable, accessible, interoperable, and usable. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much, Stefano. We have a question in the chat. How do you ensure that the researcher is following the protocol in practice? Please limit your question to 30 seconds. We have to move on.
The research following the protocol, in which sense? Do you mean the clinical protocol, the IT protocol?
Sarah, can you explain?
Sorry, it was also in the sense that will you recommend specific structures that make sure that they review the processes that the researcher is using, so that the protocol is being complied? And you already mentioned 2 types of protocol. It would be the IT level and in data sharing practices.
Well, I don't know if I understood correctly the question. Anyway, the behavior, you're talking about the behavior of a researcher, right?
Yes, so that he knows, because sometimes the researcher, his objective is to produce the best optimal research, and they don't know all of these protocols sometimes, and so how to make sure that they are aware of this and what they have to follow. And
that's a very good question, because researcher, well, actually, they don't even use, I mean, LOINC protocol to express selection criteria. So this is some kind of knowledge that should be transmitted not only to the researcher, but also to the IT section that supports the research, because this platform in some way should be, I mean, transparent for the researcher. They should be provided with some tools that feeds the central repository, and then let them use automatically. Don't ask me how, because we are working on this. We don't have an answer right now. The information that is structured and collected on the Smart EHR on the patient forms, and use that kind of information to express the criteria for data selection, exit criteria, and enrollment criteria. So this is, and we know that is somehow a disruptive proposal, because we are asking the researcher to deal with some more technological aspect of research that nowadays they are not, I mean, considering when they are planning and designing the research protocol, the clinical research protocol, because of course they are focused on the main objective, on how to produce that effect, how to study that clinical condition. So their focus is a different kind of focus. So perhaps the help of a data scientist that is nowadays associated with many research protocols might help to add this technological layer to the research in order to ease the deployment of the research, the management of the research. I don't know if I gave an answer to your question.
Okay, may revisit at the panel as needed. Thanks a lot. I think there are other questions which will be either be taken later in the process or at the panel. Stefano?
Sorry, I was just giving a look at the chat, and the question of Asia is relevant.
Okay, then
right now we will see the cloud component, so we'll give you an answer. Thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot, Stefano. Indeed, I guess that the question of Asia will be answered in the presentation of Francesco Torelli in the synopsis a little bit later. So we head now over to George Petrescu from the Clinical Emergency Hospital of Bucharest. And he will explain to us how European patients can securely store their health data for exclusive access by healthcare provider in emergency situations. That means when they are not conscious and cannot, let's say, present themselves on their mobile. Okay, up to you, George.
Thank you. Good morning. So I'm going to present you how we can use the medical data in emergency situations. So in this example, we have a Romanian patient that is using the Smart EHR app on his phone, and all his health data are being synchronized with the Smart EHR cloud. And while abroad, the patient is traveling, let's say, to Belgium in this example, and the patient starts complaining of nausea and vomiting and has also mild abdominal pain. He is able to call the emergency number and is being taken to the local emergency room. The patient there is in a altered mental state and is needing proper treatment. Luckily, the patient uses the Smart EHR app and has with him his identity token, which can be a plate worn on the neck with a QR code or a fingerprint. Also, the local hospital has the InteropEHRate services integrated into their electronic medical record. An authorized healthcare professional, such as a nurse or doctor, accesses the HCP web app and uses the patient's identity token to access the emergency dataset of the patient that is stored in the Smart EHR cloud. The data is downloaded and translated in the French language, and in this way, the doctors find out that the patient has a history of coronary artery disease and also that he's allergic to latex. Given this, the patient will follow all the procedures with latex-free kits, procedural kits, and after his routine lab tests, he's being referred to the coronary angiography catheterization lab, where he undergoes prompt revascularization procedure. The results of the coronarography are being uploaded into the Smart EHR cloud, and the Romanian general practitioner is able to download this information and have this information translated into Romanian language, and he can see the results of the patient. If we can go to the next slide. So in this way, we have verified healthcare professionals that access health data in a secured fashion, and they are being able to better and faster offer medical treatment to patients in emergency situations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, George. Also, very quick time for a question. I cannot see the chat, so if Stefan, you can check if there is any question regarding.
No, there are no questions for George at the moment.
Okay, then let's move on and hand over to Francesco Torelli, technical coordinator for the project from Engineering Italy, to provide a synopsis on key features and added value of the InteropEHRate approach. Over to you, Francesco. I will share with you the control.
I have. Okay. Can you hear me, Tino? Can you hear me, everyone?
Perfectly. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I'm experiencing some problem with the connection, so to be sure. Okay. Are you able to project my slides? Because I cannot see them. Sorry.
So we are on the first slide on the InteropEHRate Open Specification.
Okay. Sorry. Okay. Okay. So this is just a summary of what you have seen till now. So you have seen three presentations. These three presentations shown you three scenarios. These three scenarios exploits three of the main results of the project, that are the specification, the open specification of three different communication protocols. In the first presentation,
We lost sound.
We cannot hear you, Francesco.
Francesco, we cannot hear you. Francesco, non ti sentiamo. We cannot hear you.
The T2D protocol that allows to exchange health data without the internet. The remote to the protocol that allows to import health record in the SER mobile app. Actually, the R2D protocols are three different protocols. One of them is called R2D Access, and this is the protocol that you have seen in the first presentation at the beginning, when the patient import on the smartphone the health records from an hospital. In that case, the import of data is done using the internet. So in this first case, the R2D protocol is called R2D Access and allows to import health records at distance, differently from the D2D protocol that instead allows to exchange health records when the physician and the patients are face to face, because there is no usage of internet, but the Bluetooth connection is exploited. There are also other two R2D protocols that are called R2D Backup and R2D Emergency. The R2D Emergency is the protocol that you have seen exploited in the third presentation of George, where you have seen that the patient, the ACPs, have the possibility to access to health records stored on an optional cloud service. The patient indeed has the possibility to back up all the health records that are stored on the smartphone on a cloud services that he can freely choose. So the patient is not obliged to use any cloud service. It's just a possibility. So an advantage, of course, to use also a cloud service is that the health data are not lost if the smartphone for some reason is not anymore available. Is also a way to move the data from one smartphone to another smartphone. The patient can back up all the data on a cloud service and then import again the data on another mobile device. An important feature of this cloud service is that the data are sent to the cloud services already in an encrypted format, and the cloud provider does not have the key to decrypt the data. So there is no way for the cloud provider to access the actual data of the patients, but only the patient and the trusted ACP, the trusted healthcare professionals, will have the possibility to look at the health information of the patient. All these details will be better described in tomorrow's presentation that are more technical oriented. The third protocol that you have seen exploited in the presentation done by Stefano is the RDS protocol, the Research Data Sharing Protocol. This is a third communication protocol that again exploits internet and allow the patient to exchange information directly with the research centers. Again, we will be able to see more technical details also on the research protocol. Sorry, there is an echo. So I'm looking now at the second slide. What I want to stress today is that our projects try to create a synergy between two complementary approaches. One of them is called healthcare-centered approach, and the second one is the citizen-centered approach. Next slide, please, Tino. I guess the slide is already projected, but I cannot see it.
It's on the screen, yeah.
Yes, okay. I will look at the presentation from my laptop. So in this slide, you can see depicted the healthcare-centered approach. In this approach, all the data are stored in the local EHR or in the EHR of healthcare organizations. Healthcare organizations are connected usually to regional EHR, and these regional EHRs are used for exchanging data between different countries, between healthcare organizations of different countries. This is basically the approach that is exploited by the HDSI initiative of Europe. These local EHRs and regional EHRs are also exploited to share data with specific research studies. So in this approach, the data are actually governed by healthcare providers. Next slide, please, Tino. Okay. So this approach have several advantages. First of all, the data sources are trustable because you know that the data are provided directly from the healthcare organization shared in these regional HRs. It's more easy to assure a compliance with the local regulations because usually the local HRs are managed, governed by the local institutions, by public institutions, often, and is potentially easy to assure a completeness of the healthcare data. Of course, if all healthcare organizations are connected to the regional HR, we can guarantee that all data coming from the healthcare organizations are actually available and exchanged. But there are also a set of limitations. First of all, at least in the current approaches, the citizen cannot access to the data produced in foreign countries, because usually if a citizen is connected just to the regional HR of its own region, of its own country. The citizens have a limited control on health data exchange. Of course, usually they can give or retrieve a consent for the exchange of data, but they cannot actually control when this exchange happens. The local HRs are mainly focused on information coming from the healthcare organizations, so usually they lack integration with data produced by third-party mobile applications, including wellness applications. And finally, of course, these approaches usually depends from the availability of the network, because the exchange of data are exploits some kind of network. The citizen-centered approach instead, that is the one more exploited by our project, maintain the data mainly in devices of the patients. So the patients actually governs the management of the data. The citizens moves with their data, so data are not necessarily exchanged at distance, but we can exploit protocols like the D2D protocol of InteropEHRate to exchange data without the internet, without a network connection. The data are provided also to the research studies directly by the citizen. So next slide, please, Tino. Okay, so again, there are a set of limitations also in this kind of approach, because of course the exchange of data now depends on the citizens. There is a duplication of data. Because data are stored both in the local HRs of the healthcare organization and also duplicated on the smartphone of the citizen or duplicated on the cloud of the citizen. There is also some limitation with the images, because it's difficult to store very large images on current mobile devices. Also, if we think that this kind of limitation will improve in the next years. But in any case, there are several important advantages with this citizen-centered approach. As you have seen, these protocols can be exploited also in foreign countries, so citizens can receive data also from hospitals that belongs to not to their own countries. They have more control on the health data exchange, because both in the healthcare scenario and the research scenario, it's the citizen that decide when to share the data and with whom. The data can be consulted also offline, because the data are stored directly on the mobile device of the citizen. Researchers can contact potentially more people and can obtain the consent directly from the user. And this sometimes is a big advantage for the secondary use of data. And there is also the possibility to enlarge the data, so make available to the healthcare professionals data that comes from third-party applications. Next slide, please, Tino. So the very, at the end, the goal of our project is to make an integration between these two different approaches. In particular, I remember there was a previous questions about how we can make the coexistence between the CDA, that is the standard used, for example, by EHDSI, so usually used in many hospitals, and the FHIR standards that is exploited by our approach. Actually, tomorrow you will see that another important result of the InteropEHRate project is a set of tools that helps to map information stored in a legacy format to the file formats used by InteropEHRate. This is in particular exploited, is already exploited, for example, in the medical scenario where we actually mapped data that are stored in CDA format in the local HR to the file format exploited by InteropEHRate. So we think that the two approaches can coexist and we can take the advantages of both the approaches, and so overcome the limitation of the single approaches. Next slide, please, Tino. I cannot see it, but I guess
on the screen.
Yeah, okay. So about the added value of the InteropEHRate specification. So you already have seen several advantages of each one of these approaches. I would stress also a few other advantages that probably are not evident in today's presentations, but will be more evident in the presentation of tomorrow's. First of all, we already stressed that the specifications are open specifications, so they are not tied to a specific vendor. Any one of these protocols can be implemented in different ways by different vendors. When we talk about setup, we are not talking of a specific app. In our demonstration, you have seen the Andaman 7 mobile application, but other developers can develop similar mobile application that exploits our protocol. So one advantage of the usage of open protocols is that all the organizations and the citizens does not depend anymore from specific vendors, and so it's more easy to move the data from one source from different sources to different destinations. Another important thing to stress is, for example, that the R2D protocol exploits the ADAS regulation. This allows the citizen, for example, to use the same credentials, the same user and password to import data from different sources or in different use cases. So it's not needed to use different credentials for any data sources. The additional tools that are developed by InteropEHRate also helps to convert and translate the data in different languages, as the data are represented using common international terminologies. It's possible to present them to the users in different languages. And we exploit digital signature in different protocols, so it's possible to certificate the provenance of the data, also if the data are stored within the mobile phone. Next slide, please. So last slide, just to highlight what we think are key benefits of the self-managed approach and the combination between this approach and the healthcare organization-centered approach. So as the data are stored on the mobile device of the citizen can be more alert to their health. They have more control on their data, and there is the possibility to have an higher privacy, for example, because the T2T protocol does not use the internet, because, as I said, the third cloud provider has no possibility to access the health information of citizens. Also for the healthcare organization, there are different advantages, in particular the possibility to receive more health data. And a similar possibility is available for the researchers. Potentially they can receive richer data, and especially it's easier to collect all the data from different citizens. It's more easy to reach citizens that are placed in different countries. That's all. I hope.
Yeah, thank you very much, Francesco.
It was clear.
Yeah. I think we have to move to the panel discussion. So I hand over to Stefan to start the debate. Please, Stefan.
Okay.
Sorry, Stefan, Matteo speaking. Before to start with the panel, I would like to apologize with all of you, but I have to leave 5-10 minutes before 12 because of another meeting. For sure, we'll be in touch tomorrow again. So I want to just apologize about that. Sorry.
Thank you, Matteo, and see you tomorrow. Good. I take the opportunity. Okay, maybe Francesco, I would like to just to give one question to you before we move over to the panel, because we have one question here in the chat, which asks on the relation between the smart EHR of our project and Smart on Fire. Is there any relationship between, besides that the word smart is in both of them?
Currently, the main relationship is that we share common approaches. So we use similar specifications for the data. The authorization mechanism is actually different because, as said, we are using ADAS authorization mechanisms. Smart on Fires instead use authentications using credentials that are specific to the healthcare providers. So there are differences, but where possible, we are trying to use the same approach to be as compatible as possible.
Okay, thanks a lot. So, then we move over to the panelists. Thank you, panelists, and please switch on more cameras so that we are able to see you. Just some instructions for the audience. We are a little bit over time, but nevertheless, we will try also to bring you on board with questions later on, as we have already practiced in the webinar. Please announce questions in the chat. It will then also be possible to open the microphone in the process. Before I introduce our panelists, you see here on this page you're currently seeing the nice pictures of the panelists, of course, but also this www.menti.com. We have prepared an online poll to make this more interactive and lively. And please visit this URL. This page will now stay for the whole duration of the panel, so you have time. And if you visit the website, either with your mobile or with your desktop, and enter this code, you will find everything there. There are 2 rating questions and 2 where you ask for words, which will end up in a word cloud, and we will before we end the panel, we will come back to this. So, and thank you, Tino, for preparing and handling this. So now we can now welcome Eva Türk, Avia Delagic, Sarah Roda, Andrea Bellardinelli, and once more Gary Thompson. And I will introduce you a little bit more while I pose to you then the first question. Let me start how we have you now here listed. Eva works currently at the Institute of Health and Society in Oslo, and her research is focused on person-centered care, digital health, health literacy, patient safety, quality of life, and so on. She also is active in the Red Cross and is in the board of EMA, the European Health Management Association. And she provides today to the panel the perspective, a more general perspective of citizens and patients. As in Asia, she is an infection control nurse, currently working at the NHS England, United Kingdom. Sarah, she is a lawyer by education, and she's a senior policy advisor at CPME, and she is specialized in public administrative law, and she is for quite a while in the European stakeholder groups active, so we know you for a while. Andrea Bellardinelli, he is head of health systems innovation in the Tuscany region, Italy, and Carrie Thompson has already been introduced earlier today. So welcome and thank you very much for joining us. The idea is now to use you first a little bit as a, let's say, a generic sounding board, and I would ask now to go in the sequence. So we start with Eva, just to provide us a quick impression of what you heard today. Can we expect the citizens and patients like to carry their health data around with them on the smartphone on one hand? Would we expect that health professionals would like to use the data this way? So this is now the question I would like to ask each of us to provide a comment on.
Yes, thank you first for the invitation and for the great presentation so far. For me, it was a good learning, and I think with regards to what I think I can contribute with regard to the more general perspective and how to involve the patients, what I really liked with the solution is that is in a way also citizen focused. So it does involve the citizens, and I think what we have been discussing previously was also with regard to how patients need to be engaged in this solution. So we have to be part of the collection, curation, data, how to control the data as well. So for me, it's in a way a very important aspect that I would actually like to pose back. The question is, how can we then ensure that we are all enough digitally literate to be able to control all of these data in the solution, that we can actually take the best out of it? Because I think everything is possible if we are as patients empowered to do so, and we have the understanding why this is the best for us.
Okay, thanks a lot. Just one remark to my friends in the project. It didn't say so explicitly, but we expect the speakers to step in as appropriate into this panel. Of course, I'm not the one who could answer to the questions alone, so maybe the speakers would also kindly open their cameras, Francesco, Stefano, Vincent, and so on, so that we are jointly here together. Okay, thanks a lot. Okay, Azia, tell us a little bit what you do and your comment, and then you have already put a question in the chat where you may also want to come back to. You have to open your microphone. We cannot hear you. You have to open your microphone. Now, yes. Okay, we can still not hear you. Okay, that's okay. Unluckily, you have not.
Top right.
On the top right, yes, there's the settings button. where you may have to switch on the right audio source for GoToMeeting. Maybe we give you a moment to fix this and move then on to Sarah. Just please look up the settings, and we will come back to you.
Okay, then thank you so much again for the kind invitation and the words. For the questions that you have presented, I think it seems to be a very comfortable way of having the health data. But as also mentioned before, there needs to be strong security and data protection safeguards. And if a mobile is stolen, there should be ways to immediately block access to the health data by third parties. In connection to trust the information from this device, I think from the healthcare perspective, I think it depends on the format of the data provided, the type of data in question, and for what purpose. And for example, giving you this more extreme case, if we have audits to professional athletes and we are checking laboratory results, are we going to trust a scan in a particular app on a mobile? So I think it might depend on the context and for what purposes this could be used. And therefore, we support the use of that medical records are encrypted. So encryption by design, and include also in this point metadata, because we see that encryption is still very outdated. I think it dates from 2009, there's some cryptographic message syntax and other in 2001. So why not also work on encryption techniques in this regard?
Did I understand well that your proposal is to encrypt metadata?
Yes, because you can also retrieve a lot of information from metadata. You can check, you can know which kind of doctor you have went to, and you have to make sure how this is this can be made in a more secure way.
Okay, so may I quickly invite Francesco to make a point what is encrypted in InteropEHRate? I understand we have end-to-end encryption somehow.
Okay, actually the topic requires two different answers, because it depends if we are talking of the mobile app or if we are talking of the SER cloud. Actually in both the case, we require that everything is encrypted, not just the data, but also the metadata. Of course, the focus of the project is mainly on the communication, because our main result is the specification of the communication protocols. Anyway, as Matteo said at the beginning, we also release the specification of a set of rules that must be fulfilled by all the providers of mobile apps, of SER mobile applications, and the SER cloud services. This specification could become potentially the basis for a future certification process, where both the mobile apps and the cloud services are certificated. And in any way, we have put it very attention for the cloud services to assure that actually the service provider have no possibility to access the data, the metadata, and we have left the freedom also to avoid to share the identity of the citizen with the healthcare providers. So this actually depends from the provider, but if the provider accepts, we can avoid to share also the identity of the citizen. The citizen can create an anonymous account on the service providers and just send anonymous encrypted data. The providers neither knows that that data contains health information. It's just the sharing of a bunch of encrypted data, and that's all from the point of view of the cloud providers. There is some higher risk with the mobile application.
Okay, can we hear you now? Thank you, Francesco. Can you try again?
Yes, yes, of
okay,
course.
great.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, perfect.
Yes, okay, thank you so much. Thank you for this invitation and opportunity. I would like to tell you that I'm participating on behalf of European Federation of Nursing Association. And I have heard about this project for the first time, and I'm very excited because I think this is the best I've heard of. I'm aware of the great problem in healthcare sector that we have with data. We still have paper folders in many hospitals around Europe, I'm sure. Although the hospitals are in the transition to have more of computer stored data, I'm sure that there is a transition to go through. And also I would like to say that I'm really excited to hear that patients, or let's say citizens, are going to be having those healthcare data. And I think it's very practical actually, because we are all, we are moving a lot. And so the idea is brilliant. And I think that you have worked out a good foundations for this project, and that we can work together more in future, because there are challenges that we need to overcome. Now, I would like to just maybe point out a few. So I think that the greatest challenge is going to be a standardization in terms of the equipment that is used, because, you know, the mobile phones probably will be very capable of holding application and make it work properly, but we need to make and ensure that we have the users in the institution, whichever it is, EHR local institutions, that have possibility to download and retrieve those data, and also some further ideas about the budgets and financing, and also who is going to be financing and be having the financial responsibility over the cloud and the data storage. So I think that there are some things that need to be looked into to make it work good. And also I was thinking of, you know, if there is some data that is standardized already, it will be easy. But if we have, for example, a scanned document and it's in another language, so there are details like practicalities around it that have to be worked out. But I'm sure that on the nursing community will also be very happy to be included and to support the project.
Okay, thanks for this great feedback. And actually, the project indeed strives to use standardization as much as possible and works to the highest standards. And we tomorrow with Gabor Bella, he has responded in the chat today, and his team, Simone, we will learn how the transmission or of data, not only the translation but also the transcoding is happening in a really up-to-date and innovative way. But this will be for tomorrow. Okay, thanks a lot. Okay, Carrie, what can you say on the project? Is it of course, we are aware, being a little bit a while around in the European stakeholder community, that to enable health data online access to European patients and citizens, I think that has been a long-standing or a goal of the European Commission. So, are we now close to? Did we achieve it already? How do you see this project in this regard? You have to open your micro.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you very much to all the speakers today and for the invitation again. I mean, I have really appreciated getting this deep dive into what the project is doing. One knows the heading, but until you really hear from the project leaders about what's going on, it's hard to really see. But so I think the question around for me the whole actually getting data then out, and will it be used by the citizens and patients? It's about, we're engaged in really constructing this enormous jigsaw puzzle, and we're all holding different bits of the jigsaw puzzle. And I think, you know, in part of it is clearly, you know, can we actually create the tools to facilitate the access and a trusted access and the portability of the data? And I think I can see that's where your project is really engaging, and that's one part of it. I think another part of it then is the quality of the data, and this is the work that's going on in many other domains which we have to work on, because at the end of the day, you know, we talk about citizens and patients, but clearly there are many different kinds of citizens and patients. We've got the athletes having the occasional lab tests. We've got citizens who are really only interacting with their health and care when they need a light screen or a quick routine test. And then we've got the kind of experts in all this, which is the chronic disease patients. And I think they're going to be really the leaders in terms of actually using these tools and helping us to understand how these all the jigsaw pieces can fit together in practice. So, and then I think alongside the quality of the data, we've also got issues around what are the accompanying tools, you know, with the data, and what kind of literacy do our citizens and patients have, and both in terms of actually how they can use the data, in their understanding what the data means about their health, in their understanding of how they can manipulate the data, what they can do in their on their private lives to influence their health data. So I think I see your project as being a very, very important part of this jigsaw puzzle, that nexus between the citizens and access to the data. In terms of where we are, then we're incidentally, I think it's a varied picture across the EU. We have launched a survey this summer, which the member states have just largely completed, and we hope to have the results in the autumn, that is looking at issues like this, such as you know, I mean, asking questions: do patients have access to their own health-related data in the EHR system? Is it, member states can tell us whether it's in the planning stages, whether it's routinely used at national or at regional level, you know, and how is it designed and presented so that member states can readily understand their access. So I think this is part of the reviewing the landscape for exactly where we are, but it's a complex jigsaw puzzle, and once again I thank you very much for what you've presented this morning, because I think for me it's clear that you're at a very kind of important nexus in the whole debate.
Okay, thanks a lot. Before we continue, I'm seeing here that in the chat, my colleagues, Luc is reminding you of the Mentimeter poll. Please, we are in a moment coming back to it. So please, if you have not filled it yet, please do so now. We are a little bit beyond time, but I guess we should target then to close at latest at 10 minutes past 12. I know, unluckily, the representative of the Tuscany region, he was called up to an emergency meeting related to COVID-19, so he will not join us. And so let's bring one additional question to the panel. Of course, we are all ourselves mobile phone users, and many of us use some kind of fitness tracker whatsoever. How do you see? Would you like to have such a smart EHR interfacing with these kind of services? Would it bring extra value, or is it not needed to connect? Just a quick round. May I start again with Eva?
Yes, well, personally, I very much like this kind of things, so I'm very supportive of this. But I think there is also an issue with regards to the mindsets and cultures in different countries, and I think this is an important aspect. Also, how do we then create the trust around it and around the stakeholders involved in this? So I think it's also probably seeing that the different countries might have more or better, basically, citizen engagement with regards to data sharing and data collection than other countries. I think this is also one of the aspects to take into account here. Personally, I'm up for it.
Okay, thank you. Azia, you have to unmute yourself.
Probably, hello?
Yes, okay, once more. Now we hear you.
Okay. So I think that we are already probably using it on our phones, because you know those simple apps with having analysis how you sleep or how many steps you do daily and things like that. Many people probably are already using, but I absolutely agree with Eva. It is not that simple. Especially when we look throughout the whole Europe, because there are cultural differences, there is level of digital literacy, there is different, and also like as Sari was saying, we need to look into also the patient groups and how the data will serve them the best, and how to also make it in the context of patient safety, especially when we are using the data from hospitals or healthcare institutions. We need to think of the quality of data and then just make the best approach and the best end product that will be well served, you know. And especially I'm really excited because I think for the research it will be a great way, because the research is as such, they already have some definitions and standardization. So I'm sure that this will be the easiest way to have some positive outcomes and some early studies, because the other, like encompassing big institutions and establishing those EHR local centers, that will probably need a little bit longer timeline and a little bit more of work and development across Europe.
Okay, thanks a lot. Sarah? You have to unmute.
Well, I think one of the things that could be on this project is, and what I really liked to hear was about the use cases scenarios and the fact, and so I would also advocate to use real life clinical scenarios to continue to be identified and described very well, to see where the exchange of the electronic health records is necessary, to work from there on the use cases, because it needs to be helpful for patients and healthcare professionals and also for the healthcare system. And also linking to the other point that I wanted to make is, in order for, and it's also connected to the digital literacy that we were talking about, in order to be useful and for doctors and healthcare professionals to take it up, it needs to be a part of the care pathway. So it has to be something that in their clinical processes, so that they are not disrupted. And also the exchange of health electronic records must allow the doctor to spend more time with the patient and not take out that time in these functionalities. So the digital literacy will indeed be important.
Okay, thanks a lot. Before we come back to Carrie once more, I would now like to give it to Tino to show us the Mentimeter results, so to bring in the audience.
Yes, thank you, Stefan. Well, we have already compiled some questions, and these are actually the results. For the first question, from the patient perspective, we can see that there is a huge level of agreement, both for receiving healthcare emergencies and also for health research. So you can see the distribution is really linked to the 4 to 5, 4.6, 4.6. So it's vast majority thinking that this is actually a good solution for the three scenarios we have discussed. When we have asked about which word comes to your mind when you answer this question, the winner is security, and this has been reinforced by different presentations and even questions from panelists. And I think this is a nice summary that this is a strong driver for this sort of solution. So increasing the security from and for the patient. When we look at the second question from the health professional or researcher, the user of this data in the two domains, clinical practice and for research, there's again a high degree of agreement, a little bit more slightly more for research than for clinical practice, but I could conclude that is in both cases relevant. The word that wins is availability, and this is actually a call for the project to make these solutions available for patients, citizens, healthcare providers, and researchers. So a very nice message from the audience. And that's all. This is the result from the Mentimeter, and I hand over back to you, Stefan.
Yes, that's indeed impressive, and the level of positive ratings was even better than in our internal test. Good. So, okay, just to be able to close the day, Carrie, can I give the word once more to you? How are you surprised by those results?
No, I'm not surprised. I thought I mean, I think it reflects very well, you know, how we see this emerging. I mean, I think what's difficult for all of us is that, certainly in the country that I'm from, although it's leaving the EU, but I come from a country where in the UK, for example, where there's quite low expectations about this, about using data. So I think, you know, we need to get the system working in a way that people can trust. But then there are different levels of trust required for different kinds of people. And then I would foresee that, you know, once it's potentially possible for a citizen to access their data through their phone, I would imagine we're going to see a lot of focus on user-friendly tools to come up as a layer on top of that people can then use to, I imagine there being quite an explosion in that market. So if we can ensure these tools are combined with security features so that the tool doesn't grab your data at the same time. And then I think we're really flying in. Then we can start creating tools that specific patient groups, you know, maybe specific cancer groups will want versus, you know, the more sort of casual citizen who's sports mad will want. And we'll be able to have a marketplace in a sense for how we actually are going to, what's the interface between us and our data, and what fits how we want to use our data. And behind that will be, I think, a sort of, you know, a fast interest and uptake from citizens themselves. And there will be, you know, early adopters, and this will have an influence on others in the population. So I think that's going to be a very exciting phase when we get there. We're clearly not there yet, but, you know, obviously your project is part of it. And I mean, just to make the link over, for example, with financial data, of course, you know, 15 years ago we were not looking at financial data through our phones either, and now we're doing it all the time. So I think it's going to be, you know, looking at the sort of brave new world. If we can crack all these security and other aspects, then I think we're facing a very interesting and exciting time for how people get empowered with their health data.
Okay, thanks a lot. So let's take this as a closing message for this panel. So thank you all panelists. It was really nice to meet you and to have all your input and to get this some level of pragmatism into what the project is doing, but also this I heard a lot of excitement and that we are on a journey to really nice and achievable goals. Okay, thank you very much to the panel, and Carrie, we will see you again tomorrow for closing all this. So then we will see you again, and with this we come to the closing. Tino, is this the last page, or do we have? Okay, no. So of course, so we are. The circle is closing. Today we had the overall introduction and had already a lively debate on this. Many elements that have been addressed in the chat were indeed going in the direction of protocols and APIs. So in the second part of this workshop tomorrow, we will just have a very brief rehearsal of what has been today. and you will see really hands-on presentations with some step-to-step explanations what's happening when the mobile meets the healthcare professional PC, and the whole perspective also in level of this transcoding, translating content. So thank you for joining us today, and we're looking forward to meet you again tomorrow morning at 10. And you are very welcome to join us already from roughly 9:50, where we will have, let's say, a kind of an informal meeting, also for testing purposes. So, so looking forward. Thank you for today, and see you again tomorrow. So closing now. Enjoy the rest of the day.